All right, guys, let's talk about randomness real quick here. I have started a new project in IntelliJ, and so far I just have the sample code where I replaced the hello world with what I was doing. So I'm gonna hit run on this just to make sure that things are working. Cool, great. All right, now let's talk about randomness. So there's a couple different ways to achieve randomness. I'm going to go over here two primary ways. So the primary ways I'm going to go over are using math.random and using the random class from the Java utils library. So let's start with math.random because it's a bit easier to comprehend. Is a it takes a bit more doing, but it's here. Um, Personally, I tend to like math.random because I understand exactly what it's doing and I can manipulate it myself. Um, the random class is just a little bit more opaque, and I have to remember a couple more things that divide it from similar objects in other languages. But if you're using it a lot, it's a great utility to have, so easy peasy. Either way is totally fine. So let's start off with that math.random function. So I'm going to make a little double here that I'm going to call random number. And this is going to be equal to the result of calling math.random. Okay, and then this isn't used for anything right now, so we're going to do a system out printf, and we're going to put in here a little string just telling us what our random number was. So the random number is colon, let's see, and in order to get a double to display, we of course need to put a, F here, not a D, an F. And then we need some kind of a new line character just to kick things over. And then we'll put a comma and we'll put our random number in here. Okay, so I'm just going to hit run on this. Let's see what we get. Okay, so I got a random number that's like 0.022, or sorry, 0.22. Now I got one that's like 0.49. I got one that's 0.28. This refreshing thing is going to get real old, so I'm just going to make a little loop here. So our loop is going to be, I'm just going to start for an integer I that's 0. We're going to do I less than 10, and we're going to increment by ones. This is just going to go ahead and let me run this 10 times so I don't have to keep pressing the run button so many times. All right, so bit of a problem here. We've gotten the same number every time. Why did that happen? Well, that happened because my randomness call was outside of the for loop. So this is one of the lessons that I want you to take from randomness. Make sure that your random number generation is happening inside the loop that you're using, because you're often going to be generating these things in a loop. If you keep getting the same results over and over, it's usually due to an error just like this one. So let's grab that guy and put him where he belongs in here. Now we'll hit run. We should see now 10 different numbers. Okay, so you might notice from these, seems like these numbers are always a decimal. This starting number is always 0 and never 1. That's correct. Like, that's how this thing works. So I'm just going to make a little note to myself that math.random generates a random float. Well, it's really a double. A random double between 0.0 and point lots of nines. Okay, notice I haven't filled these. This is like the number of decimal places here is not indicative. Essentially, we could think about this as, we could say, or It's in, if you know mathematics notation for intervals, it's in the interval from 0 to 1 with 0 included and 1 not included. So it could be possibly 0, can't be 1. So it's a number between 0 and 1. It could be 0, it can't be 1. What that means is that if I want an integer, so if I want to make an integer, let's say I want to make an integer between 1 and, oh, what the hell. Actually, let's make an integer between 7 and 14. Okay? So I want to make a random integer between 7 and 14. So how many numbers are there between 7 and 14? Well, let me say that I want to include both 7 and 14. Okay, so that's a random number between 0 and 7 that I added 7 to. So my last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 7. So I'm going to put that in here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a random number between 0 and 1. I already have one, so let's get a random number. And I already have one. But I'm going to use a different one here. So we're going to make a double here that we're going to call rand. Let's call it random double. And this is going to be the result of doing math.random. Okay, so now I've got a random number. This one is between 0 and 1. Remember, it includes 0, it doesn't include 1. So then the next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to scale it. So I need to scale it to be between 0 and 8. My reasoning for picking 8 is I really want an integer between 0 and 7. So if I want an integer between 0 and 7, I need a decimal between 0 and 8, and then we'll round everything down. Okay, so we'll scale this number to be between 0 and 8. So we'll do random double is, random double, times, let's see, so it was between 0 and 1. I want it to be between 0 and 8, so I'm going to multiply by 8. Okay, so random double times 8. It says it's assigned and not used because I'm not done yet. So after we've scaled, this is where we're going to need to round down. So to the nearest integer. Okay, so if I want to round down to the nearest integer, I'm going to use math.floor on my random double that I had. And I'm going to store that into well, I'd love to store it into an integer. Let's try that. So I want an integer. This is going to be our random int. It's going to be the result of calling math.floor. You'll notice this is yelling at me right now. It's yelling at me because why? Because I'm supposed to give it an integer and it's providing a double. Math.floor returns a double. So right here I'm looking, it takes a double and returns a double. So math.floor is giving me back a double. So well, I can't really call it random int and have it be a double, so I probably need to do something to force it. So the way to force it is, since I know it's a double, right? I already know I know it's a number. I'm going to use an int cast. So we're rounding down to the nearest integer and cast to an integer. So this part here is forcing the double that I got out of math.floor of random double. That int there is a typecast. That is forcing what is now an integer into an integer box. So math.floor is going to give me like 6.0000, and I'm just going to say, all right, let's just call that 6. Good enough. Now when I get down here to the bottom, I'm going to add my 7. So I'm going to do random int is random int plus 7. There's shortcuts for this if you want them. I'm not going to use them right now. We'll get there later. But feel free to use a plus equals if you know what that is. All right, now I just want to do system out print f. Okay, and then the thing I want to print here is going to be, why didn't I just copy this line? Should have just copied that line. All right, so the random integer is, this needs to be an int now, and this f can't work there. That needs to be a d for decimal integer, right? All right, so let's see. We should get all of our, I'm getting all these outputs. I'm just going to comment that system print line out. So I should only get my random numbers between 7 and 14. So I'm seeing 7, I'm seeing 14, I'm not seeing any 6s, I'm not seeing any 15s. I'm going to try that again here. Okay, cool. All right, we can make a little frequency chart to demonstrate that this is indeed random, but let's move on to our other method for now. Okay, so I'm annoyed with the way that looks. Okay, so this was the version of this using math.random. Okay, now, the other way to do this, the other way to generate random numbers is to use the random class. Okay, so to use the random class, I'm going to need an import statement. So this needs to be imported. And the place I'm going to import it is going to be up here. And that's going to go import java.util.random. I don't think I'm using that package, so I don't think we need that. Okay. Now, it's yelling at me that this import statement isn't used because I haven't used it yet. Okay, fair enough. All right, let's use it. Okay, so the first thing we need to do after we import the random class is we need to actually make a random object to work with. So we're going to say, I want to make a random variable type, right? So in my case, I'm making a random object. And I'm going to call this random generator. What the hell? Let's call it random number generator. Tab completes a thing. We can have long names. It's okay. So our random number generator is going to be a new instance of the random class. And now our random number generator, because it's a are you gonna give me some stuff here? Okay, I'm not getting the tooltip I want. So let's do random number generator dot, and we're going to see all the things that we can get out of this. Okay, so there's an enormous number of functions that are available, or methods available, in the random class. The one that I really fundamentally am going to want is going to be maybe some kind of doubles. I maybe also want some kind of integers. So you can just go ahead and do this. So let's grab the next int method here, and let's see if it'll give us some info about this. So this returns the next pseudo-random uniformly distributed integer value from this random number generator sequence. Okay, so that's a thing about the random class, is that when it makes one of these random objects, what it's actually making is a sequence of random numbers. That sequence of random numbers is predetermined. So if you use the same random number generator, it should give you the same results. That said, when you make these things, unless you specify a seed when you make it, it will use the time as a seed. So if you want uniform testing or uniform results, you should specify the seed. If you want the behavior to be random based on the if you want if you want better randomness, probably don't set the seed. Setting the seed will give you control over being able to reproduce results later. Not setting the seed will give you more randomly distributed behavior. That distinction is pretty well up to you here, but there's a testing case for which we probably want to be real explicit about setting that seed. So if we're testing code, we want to set the seed. If we're not testing the code, we probably don't want to, but that's a heuristic. Like there are going to be cases where you want to set the seed or not. Just know that you can do it. And once you set the seed, that'll make the random number generator generate the same sequence of random numbers in the same order. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as a timestamp so we can actually see our randomness. And we're going to use the next int function. And it's not giving me a lot about this. There's a couple of things about this. So the next int function, let's go ahead and say we wanted random numbers between 7 and 17. Or 7 and 14, right? Same deal as before. Okay. This is going to be my goal. Okay. First things first, this thing has an upper bound that you can go ahead and put in here. So I'm going to put in 14, and let's see how that works. Notice it's kicking the word bound here. That's nice. It's telling me that that's maybe going to work. I'm going to turn off the print line from our other kind of dice roller thing there. So we should only see this one. And notice I'm not in the for loop. Okay, and notice I didn't print anything out. So I'm going to put myself in a for loop again. Whoops. So let's not include our class creation in our for loop. Okay, so we're creating the class, and then we're going into our for loop. Okay, now this guy here ought to generate a random number. Let's get that printed out. What the hell am I doing? Let's just take the print line from right here. Okay, and we probably want to store this somewhere. So let's store this in random int 2. Okay. Now I should have 10 random integers. Right now it's yelling at me because it can't resolve the symbol because I forgot to tell it that I wanted that to be an int. Notice on this one, I didn't need to go through the hassle of turning a double into an int. I just got an int out of this. So when I hit run, I'm getting some random numbers. Those look pretty good. I got 0 out of there. Oh. I wanted this to start at 7. Okay. I got 0 out, and I'm not seeing a 14. That might just be a fluke. I got like 3 11s, so flukes happen. Let's see. I'm seeing another 0. I'm still not seeing a 14. Okay, let's see if we can figure that out. So first things first, let's get the numbers below 7 out of there. So you can do 7 comma here, and the next int function has both an origin and a bound. The origin is just the starting number. Let's try this again. Okay, the biggest number I got out of that one was 11. So I feel like maybe I'm just not doing enough tries here. Let's do 20 tries at a time. Ah, fuck it. Let's do 30 tries at a time. So let's look. Let's see here. So I'm seeing some 7s. That's good. I'm not seeing any 8s, which is weird. I'm also not seeing a 14, and I was kind of expecting to see a 14. Let's try that again. Okay, there's some 8s, so that's at least working. I'm still not seeing a 14, though. Okay, so what's up? Well, what's up here is this bound is exclusive. So what that means is this thing actually generates a number between 7 and 13 because it doesn't include this upper bound. I find this behavior real frustrating, frankly. This seems to me like this ought to go between 7 and 14, including 14, but it's 7 to 13 the way this language is written. So if we want to go up to 14, we have to put a 5 there, or a 15 there. All right, so now we should start seeing some 14s. There's one there. There's like 4 of them now. Okay, cool. All right, so these are basically the 2 ways to generate random integers. If you want random doubles or random longs or random booleans or things, the random class has a lot of those methods, so you can investigate them yourself. Notice that once I put in 2 arguments here, I got this thing about telling me about the origin and the bound. And here it says the upper bound exclusive for the return value. That's the word they're expecting you to know, is this word exclusive. So exclusive means not including. And that's what I've got for you today, guys. You might think about doing a little experimentation to figure if these are fair or not. That's a thing I'm going to add to a video about arrays in a couple of days. So I'll put that link to that video in the description here once it's out, so you can pop ahead if you want to go check and see that these are indeed fair. All right, thanks guys. Catch you on the next one.